So, hi, Jos. It's good to talk to you today. You're in Amsterdam. I'm in the UK.
Hello,
And
Elspeth.
hi. And we wanted to talk a little bit about internationalisation at home today, I think, and various aspects of that. So we know that we're in a situation with, for example, with the coronavirus or with people wanting to travel less in terms of climate change or because of geopolitical issues. That internationalisation at home is going to become increasingly important. It already has done. So we were going to talk about that, I think, and to do with online learning and how we might somehow provide an environment for people who are wanting to travel less or are unable to travel. So is that okay? We're going to have a chat about
Yeah,
some of
that's fine, and I agree with you that the current circumstances we're in is actually a continuation of thoughts and intentions and attempts that we were already undertaking to give internationalization at home a firmer place and use online learning in a meaningful way. I can give you an example. We are working with South African universities on collaborative online international learning. And what we notice every time is that the design and the rationale of why you do it is actually much more important than technology. And so what does it really add to your curriculum? One of the things we also found is that it's often not really collaborative. And so it is, you work together, but it's not a really collaborative process. So that is all in the design. And now that we are switching massively to online delivery of education, you can wonder how well we've prepared our academics and whether we have not created a quality issue. Because I think for now, in the short term, people are happy with what you offer in terms of online learning. But if in future we have to deliver all our education online, you can wonder whether we've prepared our academics enough in educational skills.
Absolutely. What can you just expand on what you mean? You said it's not particularly collaborative. How could it be more collaborative? This thinking just about this particular project you're talking about.
Well, it's called collaborative online international learning, but the academics have often not been familiarized with the principles of collaborative learning. So how do you really make the best of that? How do you, for example, really need to work together to achieve a meaningful product? So it's an educational issue.
So that's all
And
to the preparation of academics that you were
absolutely,
talking about. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
I should say perhaps that you're talking about the Hague University of Applied Sciences, I think. So just to be clear. So are you learning from that project things that you would put into place in a future project apart from the academic preparation?
Yes, I think we learn that. You just mentioned The Hague. If I see the reactions now to what is happening in the future of international education, I realize that it is quite different for us in The Hague than it is for many UK institutions, because we are not so dependent on recruiting international students. And so we have already drawn the conclusion that we don't want to be. We already had discussions. Do we not have too many international students? So there was already that sort of backlash, often for the wrong reasons, often political reasons, populist reasons. But we were already discussing this, and nobody could imagine that this would happen. But we had already shifted our attention away from mobility in and out as the key instrument for internationalization. And we were already looking at online collaboration and internationalization at home.
And you've done some really fantastic work, as I'm aware, and you've talked about and published. But so how would you then, if sticking with the online learning, how would you combine online learning with local intercultural learning, which is, I know that's what you do a lot of in terms of internationalization at home.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think they add different perspectives. So if you work online, you can basically work with people anywhere in the world. Although it really helps us to work with South Africa because there is no time difference. Um, but you work with people who are somewhere else, living somewhere else, and that's an authentic international contact and an authentic international learning environment. If you look at your local environment, these are people, unless they recently moved there, but you have a common functioning in that local environment. And so, for example, people went to school here, so they have a background and they are not 100% authentic in the sense that they actually live somewhere else. So I think those two perspectives are very complementary, and both are valuable for your internationalized curriculum. In a city like The Hague, we have a big student diversity. So nearly 40% of our students have a non-Dutch background, but we also have internationals with all the international organizations. So we have the intercultural and international in the local learning environment, and we have the authentic international basically anywhere in the world. And I think if you can make very exciting combinations of those perspectives.
Presumably the local population with diverse cultural backgrounds, presumably some of them will have been born in the Netherlands, but others may have been more recent arrivals. So there's that kind of those kinds of differences as well, I guess. But how would you replicate that in an online scenario? Have you tried to do that?
Well, what we've tried is, we see very funny things happening, that people go to great lengths to, oh, there was a notification.
It's fine.
People go to great lengths to work interdisciplinary, online with someone on the other side of the world, whereas they have the same disciplines locally in their own building. But since we are so siloed, it's not always easy, although we acknowledge that different perspectives, because I believe that is what internationalization is about, do not necessarily have to come from across borders, but can also come from different disciplines and different cultures within your own environment.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree, and we don't always recognise that, do we? I think, and we often think internationally rather than interculturally, which is that's the direction we need to go in when we think about internationalization at home. And as we've discussed before, I mean, I think internationalization at home is not necessarily the right term. It's more interculturalization, but it's a tricky term to use.
Well, internationalization in general, in all its, and we've been talking now, for example, about resilient internationalization in these times. But I think any combination with the word internationalization is problematic.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So just on a final point then, because you talked about, you said that you're doing less in terms of mobility at The Hague. You're focusing much more on internationalization at home. The question, and you've talked about South Africa just now as well, but if people, for example, if the world is then able to move forward and return to the kind of a mobility scenario that we've had in the past, but there are people concerned about, well, as you say, both geopolitical issues, but also the climate change issues, and they don't want to use airplanes, for example, anymore, such that they would be looking towards mobility within a distance that they can travel by train or whatever. To what extent do you think we can learn a lot from different European countries or places that we could travel to easily by train rather than flying everywhere?
Yeah, I think what we may see is that the mobility becomes more regional because it's easier to control certain regions, health and safety wise. So yeah, you can indeed wonder whether you can learn anything there is to learn within Europe and places where you can travel to by train, or that there are things that you really need to cross the world for. Maybe this is a time to rethink
Mm.
why we actually went to Australia. I mean, we already had that um, backlash. A colleague of mine flew to Australia for a 20-minute presentation.
Ah,
And if you are a bachelor student and you follow a very generic curriculum, how much does it add to do that on the other side of the world?
mm,
So I think that is a discussion we will see. And I think in Europe, with all its cultures and languages, you can maybe expect that you can learn anything there is to learn
mm.
in your field within Europe.
Yeah, you've said to me before that even within the Netherlands, apart from the diverse communities that we've talked about just now, but you in the sort of historical context, the long term um, people who live in the Netherlands, you've got very very different cultures going on in different parts of quite a small country. So that
Absolutely.
that you can, you know, going to other countries across Europe, you can equally find similar things.
Yeah, we've in the Netherlands always focused on our neighboring countries, Belgium and Germany, and what was called internationalization on your bike.
Yeah.
So we have very good contacts with Belgian and German universities. So I think we will start to re-evaluate or revalue those connections,
Mm.
and maybe use them much more consciously to reach our aims for internationalization.
Yeah, to be aware how much we can learn from close neighbours. And there was one I remember reading in the UK about I think it was a medical degree where they even just used uh, city versus countryside to get people to have different experiences in their practice. So I mean, I think there's you know there's an awful lot that can be done within relatively local areas, I think. Yeah.
I think so too, particularly since many of our students do not live in the major cities, but they commute,
Mm,
which was partly a consequence of the increased real estate prices, which was then also a consequence of tourism and Airbnb and so many apartments where students
mm,
could live being withdrawn from the market. You see that changing. And so we see maybe more students coming back into the cities.
mm, mm.
So that will also affect this city, countryside, or rural and urban
Yeah, yeah.
dimensions.
So lot to think about anyway, lots of opportunities really. But anyway, well, thanks very much for talking to me today. It was really interesting.
Sure, Alfred?
Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes, physically.
Yes.